the millionaire's daughter was attacked by bees. Until the maid saved her life. The Rivers Forest Side estate had always possessed a quiet kind of beauty, but that morning its silence felt heavier than usual. Dense, expectant, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Mara Thompson, the housekeeper who had lived with the family for over 2 years, was the first to sense it. She wasn't the kind of person others paid much attention to, but she was the kind who noticed everything. And that morning, every small detail felt like it was tapping on her instincts. In the kitchen, Grant Rivers, CEO, exhausted, always buried in work, stood in front of the coffee machine, gaze drifting somewhere far beyond the room. The silence wrapped around him so tightly that even the slow drip of coffee sounded loud in the vast space. Upstairs, there was none of Luna's usual noise, the 7-year-old whose laughter could fill the whole house. To Luna, every morning was an adventure. But today, the stillness felt wrong enough that Mara paused mid-wipe, the damp cloth in her hand tightening as if mirroring her unease. Then Elena entered. Elena Rivers, Grant's new wife. Her presence always felt like a cold breeze slipping into the room. Perfectly waved blonde hair, a gentle smile that never quite reached her eyes. Outsiders might see elegance and softness. But to Mara, that smile looked like glossy varnish covering rotten wood underneath. Elena glanced at Grant, then at Mara, her smile unchanged. "Where's Luna?" she asked softly. "Probably getting dressed upstairs," Grant replied without looking up. But Mara noticed the way Elena's fingers tightened around her mug, knuckles turning pale. A tiny reflex, but revealing enough. Moments later, Luna bounded down the stairs, brown curls bouncing, her little feet tapping against the wood as if the floor itself were her private stage. She laughed, wrapped her arms around Mara's legs, then darted to her father. A beautiful moment, yet Mara caught the way Elena watched the child. Too long, too intently. It wasn't the gaze of a stepmother trying to love a child. It was the gaze of someone calculating. Breakfast unfolded in near silence. Grant skimmed emails, Elena maintained her poised smile, and Luna rambled excitedly about the secret treehouse at the mountain lodge they would visit that weekend. A small wooden hideaway in the middle of the forest. Luna loved it so fiercely that even hearing the name made her eyes brighten. Mara knew the place well, beautiful yet isolated, peaceful yet so vast that a scream could simply dissolve into the trees. When Luna mentioned the treehouse, Elena tilted her head, smiling, but something sharp flickered in her eyes. A cold glint, like someone silently counting down. After breakfast, as Grant left for work, Elena stood by the window, watching Luna chase soap bubbles. Mara blew into the morning air. She watched long enough for Mara to feel a chill run down her spine. Elena whispered something. Mara only caught half of it. "This weekend, things will finally quiet down." Mara didn't understand it fully, but her instincts tightened like a drawn bowstring. Because the silence in the house that morning wasn't peaceful. It was the silence. Before a storm, only she seemed able to sense coming. Ever since that strange, heavy morning, Mara Thompson had felt something shifting beneath the calm surface of the Rivers home, a quiet current, dark and cold, slithering unnoticed through the walls. And the terrifying part was that no one else seemed to notice. Not Grant, buried in work, and certainly not Luna, who believed the world was stitched together with light. Mountain Lodge had been mentioned more frequently these days, a peaceful weekend getaway, the family's regular escape. A lodge deep in the mountains, isolated, where the wind always carried the sound of creaking branches. Luna loved it, especially the little wooden treehouse perched on the thick trunk of an old oak. Every time she talked about it, her eyes lit up like shafts of sun piercing the forest canopy. But to Mara, the very name tightened something inside her chest, like a warning whispered too softly to decipher. Perhaps it was because Elena changed the moment the trip was mentioned. Elena, who used to snap at the slightest noise, suddenly became strangely gentle. She no longer winced at Luna's footsteps echoing through the halls, no longer glared when milk spilled, no longer released those small, sharp comments that sliced deeper than they sounded. Now Elena smiled more. A perfect, beautiful smile, but dead in the eyes. It reminded Mara of portraits, visually flawless, emotionally void. Once, when Luna ran over proudly showing a handmade bracelet, Elena bent down and stroked the girl's hair. "You made this so beautifully, Luna," she whispered, her tone honeyed. Luna giggled, but to Mara that sweetness felt like ice sliding over skin. It wasn't affection, it was preparation. And then came Cole Mason, or rather, the way he began appearing. The family's driver and part-time security guard had always been quiet, but polite. Lately, he avoided Mara entirely, turning away whenever she passed, walking faster, finding urgent tasks that weren't there before. One afternoon, on her way past the storage shed, Mara heard voices, Elena and Cole. She couldn't catch the words, only the tones. Elena's voice low and sharp, Cole's quiet and strained, like a man pressed into a corner. The moment Mara stepped closer, both fell silent. Elena turned with a bright, polished smile. Cole stared at the ground, shoulders rigid. After that day, Cole's behavior turned even stranger. He inspected the car far too often, opening the trunk, closing it, checking the tires. Nothing that made sense. He packed the luggage before Grant even mentioned what to bring. And whenever someone spoke of Mountain Lodge, his jaw tightened slightly, as if he were swallowing something sharp. Meanwhile, Luna continued dancing through the house, blissfully unaware of the eyes that followed her. Elena always stood somewhere nearby, watching the little girl far too intently, not like someone protective, but like someone memorizing details for later use. Mara felt everything. She had no proof, no logical explanation, only the instincts of someone who had seen too many shadows hiding under polished surfaces. Someone who knew how to read what others tried so hard to hide. That evening, as the late sun slanted across the backyard, Mara stood by the kitchen window, hands still holding a dish towel, though she'd stopped cleaning long ago. Outside, in the middle of the yard, Elena and Cole stood closer than they ever should. They didn't speak, but the glance they exchanged, quick, sharp, evasive, made something sink inside Mara. She knew something was being prepared, and Mountain Lodge was no longer a getaway. It was the place where everything would unfold. The moment Elena and Cole exchanged that sharp, secretive glance lingered in Mara's mind, even as the SUV climbed the winding mountain road toward the lodge. She kept her eyes on the passing trees, but the unease from the house followed her into the forest, unchanged, if not stronger. The vehicle finally slowed as the familiar lodge appeared in the valley. Its beauty was unchanged, dark timber walls, moss-covered roof, tall windows reflecting the soft afternoon light. Yet beneath that quiet charm, something felt wrong, as though the woods were holding their breath, silently watching them arrive. Luna was the first to burst out when the door opened. "The treehouse! Mara, look!" She sprinted toward the tall wooden structure, nestled among dense branches, her eyes glowing as if the place held all the magic in the world. Mara tried to smile back, but her gaze scanned the property, searching for... she didn't even know what. Elena stepped out with a slow, calculated grace. Her eyes swept across the lodge grounds, not like someone enjoying nature, but like someone assessing a stage. She glanced at the treehouse, at the forest behind it, at the open yard where Luna ran laughing. Every look too subtle for most people to register, yet to Mara, each one carried a cold, deliberate intention. Cole opened the trunk, pulling out luggage with unusual stiffness. Whenever Mara approached to help, he flinched and stepped aside, avoiding eye contact. "I'll take care of it," he muttered, voice strained. "Are you all right, Cole?" Mara asked quietly. Fine. Too quick, too tense, as if afraid she might ask again. While Grant took Luna inside to check the rooms, Mara slipped around to the back of the property toward the tool shed. The door was slightly ajar, as if someone had entered moments earlier. Inside, several wooden crates were displaced, tools scattered in a way that didn't match Grant's meticulous organization. Fresh scratches marked the workbench, and a crumpled scrap of paper lay near the leg of the table. Mara picked it up, but found only faint pencil lines. Nothing she could decipher. Still, the feeling pressing in her chest was unmistakable. Someone had been preparing something here, and whatever it was, it had nothing to do with a vacation. When she stepped back into the yard, the mountain wind blew harder, carrying the damp scent of the forest. The sky had shifted to warm shades of amber, but the beauty did nothing to lift the heavy tension draped across the lodge grounds. From the corner of her eye, Mara saw Elena standing by the balcony rail, watching Luna with the focus of a guard rather than a mother. Cole, meanwhile, was inspecting the SUV yet again, repeating checks he'd already done a dozen times. Mara inhaled deeply, trying to steady herself. Maybe she was overthinking, maybe she was too sensitive. But when she looked up at the treehouse, where Luna climbed the small wooden steps with pure innocence, Mara's heart tightened suddenly. Mara hadn't even shaken off the unease from the trip when Luna bolted toward the treehouse as if it were a secret kingdom made just for her. "Mara, look!" she called, laughter echoing as her tiny feet drummed up each wooden step, far too cheerful for a space this unnervingly silent. And it was that cheerfulness, set against the quiet, that made a cold shiver slip down Mara's spine. There was no reason to worry, no visible danger. But her instinct, the one voice that never failed her, whispered with a breath against her ear. "This peace isn't real." A sudden gust swept past, carrying a scent unfamiliar and strangely sweet. Mara frowned, inhaling again. It wasn't honey. It was sweeter, thicker, almost manufactured. "Luna," she called softly, but the girl had already slipped into the treehouse. Mara stepped closer, eyes tracing the branches overhead. High up, where sunlight pierced through, something glinted. Tiny, but not natural. "What is that?" she murmured. From a distance, Elena leaned against the balcony, her gaze fixed on the treehouse, not with concern, but with the cool attention of someone observing an experiment. That look prickled Mara's skin. It wasn't worry. It was control. God, what is she waiting for? Mara searched the yard for Cole. He appeared for the briefest moment near the shed, cast a quick, startled look at the treehouse, then jerked away as if he had been caught. Without a second's hesitation, he ducked inside the shed and slammed the door hard enough to kick up dust. None of that was normal, not even close. The wind shifted again. The birds went silent. The air seemed to tighten around them. "Luna?" Mara called again, quieter now. Tiny footsteps pattered inside. Luna popped her head out the window, her breath fluttering her hair. She tilted her head, inhaling deeply as if analyzing something unseen. "Mara, this smell is weird." She wrinkled her nose. "Sweet, but not a good sweet." Mara quickened her steps, her heart clamping so tightly it almost hurt. "Does it make you feel sick?" Luna shook her head. "No, just curious." That word, curious, made Mara's stomach twist. Curiosity was what pulled children to the edge of danger. She wished she could say something to make Luna climb down, but a shapeless fear pressed at her throat, stealing her words. All she managed was a whisper, unsure whether to Luna or herself. "Something's wrong. I'm missing something." She looked up at the branches, at the faint glimmer she'd seen earlier, and for the first time felt it clearly, like someone had placed a cold hand along her spine. There was something waiting here, hidden above, hidden right over the head of the child she needed to protect. Mara walked slowly toward the base of the tree, trying to look natural, though everything inside her felt twisted tight, like a rope being pulled too far. She bent to pick up one of Luna's forgotten toys, pretending she was simply tidying up, but her eyes kept drifting upward, scanning the branches. Something was up there. She didn't know what, but her body sensed it. The woods were never this quiet without a reason. That strange sweetness returned, heavier now, warmer, almost breathing on her skin. Mara swallowed, tasting the sweetness even though her mouth hadn't opened. Not honey. This is too strong, too deliberate. She bit her lip, forcing calmness, but her nape tingled as if watched by something unseen. A soft rustle sounded above, tiny like a fingernail brushing wood, yet sharp enough to steal her breath. She lifted her gaze, searching through the weave of leaves. Nothing, and the absence of a source only deepened her dread. "Mara?" Luna's voice floated down, small, uncertain, as though she'd heard something she shouldn't have. "I'm here," Mara answered, steadying her tone. "What did you hear?" Luna leaned out of the treehouse window, wide-eyed and puzzled. "It sounded like something rubbing together on the roof." She sniffed the air. "And this smell is weird." Mara felt her heartbeat stutter painfully. But Elena, just a short distance away, didn't spare a glance at the child. She was keeping Grant occupied, touching his arm, speaking nonstop, steering him away from the treehouse with a smile much too wide for the moment. Purposeful, calculated. Elena knew something. Mara knew she did. And that realization sent a cold ripple down Mara's spine. Mara stepped right up to the trunk, breath shortening. The air shifted, dense, heavy, as if the forest had draped an invisible curtain over the clearing. Then, a faint hum broke the silence. Not loud, not obvious, but unmistakably alive. It sounded like the brush of hundreds of tiny wings from somewhere far above. Mara froze, every muscle pulling tight. Even her heartbeat sounded loud in her ears. Again, hum. Longer this time, like a whispered warning. Suddenly the wind surged, violent and sudden, whipping her hair back. Leaves thrashed overhead. Luna clung to the treehouse railing and cried out, "Mara! The wind is too strong!" "Hold on! Don't move!" Mara shouted back, unable to hide the tremor in her voice. Then the wind stopped, instantly, like a hand had pressed silence over everything. And that unnatural stillness was the thing that chilled Mara the most. She lifted her eyes one more time. Between two branches, something shifted, tiny, quick, a blur with weight and intent, too real to be imagination, too wrong to be part of the tree. Something is up there, and it's waiting. Mara placed her hand on the first wooden step and instantly felt her heartbeat shift, not from the height, but from the sense that the entire tree was holding its breath. She climbed another step, then another, each one pulling her deeper into a truth her instincts had known long before her mind dared to acknowledge it. That sweet scent thickened, becoming so concentrated it felt almost tangible. It resembled fresh honey, yet not quite. It was too strong, too intentional, as if something had been deliberately set here to release this smell. Mara felt it coil around her throat, slipping into her chest, making it harder to breathe. Above her the hum grew clearer, not a passing murmur, but structured, rhythmic, a delicate vibration waiting for its cue to erupt. "Luna?" Mara called softly. No answer. When she climbed high enough to see inside the treehouse, she found Luna curled up in the farthest corner, knees to chest, trembling. Her eyes were wide, her lips pressed tight, as if she were a small animal sensing danger gathering in the shadows. "Mara, that sound, it won't stop," Luna whispered. "It's all right. I'm coming up." Mara reassured, though she didn't believe her own words. A faint breeze brushed Mara's back, lifting her hair. She glanced down and saw Elena in the clearing, Arms crossed, posture perfectly composed. No fear, no worry, just observation. Cold, calculating. It was the look of someone waiting. She knows. She's known all along. At that exact moment, Cole appeared near the shed, just a flicker of movement. His eyes met Mara's for a single second, but that was enough. Guilt flashed there. Panic. He broke eye contact instantly and disappeared behind the wooden wall. Mara gripped the railing of the treehouse, her instincts screaming now, louder than the hum above her. Keep climbing. Look at what's over Luna's head. She lifted her gaze toward the roof. The afternoon sun cut through the branches, creating shifting ribbons of light and shadow. At the edge of the roof, something moved. Not the wind, not leaves, something alive, something pulsing. She held her breath and raised her eyes a little more. Then she saw it, a large, shimmering mass of golden bodies throbbing in slow, steady waves. A cluster of bees. But not a natural hive, not a shape nature would choose. This was forced, drawn in by an unnaturally strong lure, a hive created by intent, not instinct. Mara felt her blood run cold. No one could accidentally place this here. No swarm would naturally gather exactly above a child's playhouse. She placed her hand on the wooden frame, her voice slipping out not as her own, but as the raw instinct clawing to the surface. This was put here. The moment Mara's hand touched the treehouse doorway, the hum above her shifted. It thickened, deepened, swirled like a storm compressed into a single breath. A cold spike shot up her spine when she saw the first movement. Tiny golden bees crawling through the narrow cracks of the wooden roof. At first they came one by one. 3, then 5, then a steady line, like drops of living honey spilling downward. "No, not now," Mara gasped, her heartbeat crashing against her ribs. Luna saw them before Mara could speak. The girl froze, then a sharp, tearing cry burst from her throat. "Mara! Mara, don't let them in!" She curled into herself, small hands covering her head, trembling as though the air itself had turned to ice. Her scream cut through the clearing like a blade. Grant finally turned. "Luna?" he called, confusion tightening his voice. "What's—" But before he could look up at the treehouse, Elena grabbed his arm, her fingers clamping so hard her knuckles went white. "Grant, stop. It's just the wind. I told you." "Let go of me!" he barked, trying to pull away. But Elena clung tighter, and something wild flickered in her eyes, fear tangled with determination. Above, the hum erupted. Mara felt it crash around her, a vibrating wall swallowing every other sound. The bees began to pour down in layered waves, like a living mass spilling loose from a seam. She had never seen bees behave this way. This wasn't natural. This wasn't accidental. This was a reaction, triggered, deliberate. "Mara, help me!" Luna screamed, her voice cracking, and that cry snapped Mara back to herself, back from the dizziness of the sound, from the fear rooting her in place, from the paralysis tightening around her spine. If I hesitate for even 1 second, she won't make it. Grant finally tore himself free from Elena and ran toward the tree, but he was too far, too late. The hum wrapped around the treehouse like a tightening net. The swarm expanded, rolling down the roofline in purposeful waves. Mara knew what came next. The bees were seconds from taking flight, seconds from attacking. She didn't let herself think. She didn't give fear a doorway. She didn't allow anything in her mind except one truth. She had to reach Luna. "Mara, don't!" Grant shouted behind her. But she was already moving, already climbing the last step, already reaching forward as the swarm thickened above her. With every muscle ignited by instinct, she launched herself into the treehouse. The moment Mara plunged into the treehouse, the hum detonated around her like a living storm. She didn't have time to think, only enough time to grab Luna and pull the girl tightly into her arms. "Head down, Luna. Close your eyes. Hold on to me," she whispered, voice trembling yet fierce. Luna didn't speak. She buried her face into Mara's shoulder, her small body shaking. Mara wrapped one arm over the girl's head, shielding her, and turned her back toward the swarm just as the first bees struck. They hit her like hail. The buzzing was so close, it felt as if it roared inside her skull. Wings brushed her skin, bodies skimmed her neck, her hair, her arms, everything shaking, vibrating, stinging without stinging, like the air had turned into metal. "Move! Move!" Mara urged her own legs, tightening her grip on Luna as she pivoted toward the ladder. Outside the treehouse door, the air was thick with the suffocating hum. Bees spilled from the roof, twice as many, then 3 times, pouring down like a black gold cascade set loose by someone's command. "Mara!" Grant screamed from below, his voice raw with terror. He sprinted toward the tree, but was still too far to reach her. Elena stumbled backward, one hand over her mouth, eyes wide with panic. Even in her attempt to look helpless, her fear had the sharpness of someone watching a plan collapse. Mara started down the steps, each one a razor-thin border between survival and disaster. Bees slammed into her back and shoulders, tangling in her hair. One slid beneath her collar, and she clenched her teeth until her jaw ached. Any sudden jerk would ignite the entire swarm. Almost, just a little more, she whispered between frantic breaths. 1 step, 2, 3. Then her foot slipped. She lurched sideways, knee smashing into the wood. Luna screamed in terror. But even in the slip, Mara threw her arms tightly around the girl, curling her body like a shield. She could not fall. She could not drop the child. Not for anything. Mara caught the railing, regaining balance, though her hands shook violently, the knuckles bleached white. Above them, the swarm rolled forward again, a heavy wave tumbling through the air, dark and thick as smoke. "Mara, jump!" Grant shouted, voice breaking. She looked down. 3 steps left, but the bees above were circling wider now, gathering, preparing to dive. There was no choice. Mara held Luna tighter, drew the girl close, and leapt from the final step. Their bodies hit the grass hard. Pain shot through Mara's spine like a crack of lightning, but she never loosened her grip on Luna. With the hum still raging overhead, Grant reached them, dropping to his knees, his hands trembling as he touched Mara's shoulder. "Oh God, you two, Mara, Luna?" His voice shattered into near sob. The buzzing still echoed behind them as Grant held Luna close and the lodge's medics rushed in. But before Mara could fully steady her breath, a security guard sprinted toward them, pale as if he'd seen a ghost. "Mr. Grant, we found something. You need to see this. The cameras, they caught something." His voice shook uncontrollably. Grant turned sharply, fear flaring again. "What cameras? What now?" The guard flicked a glance toward Elena, standing several feet away, hugging her arms tightly as if holding her body together, then looked back at Grant. "Please follow me to the security room. It's urgent." The world seemed to fall silent. Grant handed Luna to Mara for support and followed the guard inside. Mara walked close behind them, and Elena trailed last, each of her steps dragging like she was hauling chains of her own making. The security room was small, washed in the cold blue glow of 4 large monitors. Yet when the guard opened the first video file, the room felt like the place where truth itself had been waiting to be unmasked. Footage from 3 days earlier filled the screen. A familiar clearing behind the lodge, dipped in gold afternoon light, and a shadow climbing the trunk. Grant inhaled sharply as if someone had struck him. "That's Cole," he whispered, drained of all warmth. In the video, Cole climbed the tree with practiced ease, carrying a small plastic container. When the camera zoomed in, the label became painfully clear. Bee-attracting pheromones. Then he pulled out a second box, a wooden container full of fresh honey, shining amber under the sun. He placed it on the roof of the treehouse, nudging it into perfect position. Grant staggered back. No. God, no. This can't be. But the footage kept going. Cole climbed down, and the moment he touched the ground, Elena stepped into the frame. The room froze. The air thickened. Mara felt her own heartbeat strike against her ribs. Elena approached Cole and handed him an envelope, so thick the seams bulged. Cole glanced around nervously, then snatched it quickly, stuffing it into his jacket. Grant turned toward his wife, eyes burning with betrayal. "Elena, what did you do?" Elena shook her head violently, palms lifted in defense. No, it's not what you think. Grant, please, listen, I didn't want—" The guard switched to the second clip, this one with audio. Cole's frightened voice. "Are you sure? If someone sees—" Then Elena's voice cut through the room, cold and precise. "It needs to look like an accident. She always plays up there." Grant looked as though the ground had disappeared beneath him. His hand rose to his mouth, shoulders trembling. "Elena! My God!" "No, Grant, I didn't think, I wasn't trying to kill anyone. You have to believe me. This isn't—" But her denial dissolved when two guards opened the door and brought Cole inside. He looked hollow, defeated. The moment his eyes rose to the footage, his knees crumpled. I'm sorry. She paid me? I needed the money. I didn't think it would. I didn't know." "You knew," Grant roared, his voice shattering like glass under pressure. Elena stumbled backward, shaking her head wildly, breath hitching in panic. No, this is twisted. They're turning it against me. You're all misunderstanding." But the video continued to play, her own voice, her own plan, her own words slicing through the air like blades. At last, Elena's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the floor, hands clutching her head, breath breaking apart as if she were drowning. For the first time, she understood. Truth had surfaced, and there was nowhere left to hide. Grant could barely stay upright. He held Luna so tightly it looked as though even the smallest space between them could shatter his world. The tears he'd fought back since the moment the swarm burst free finally broke, falling onto Luna's hair like late, trembling raindrops. "My sweet girl. God, I almost lost you." His voice cracked into something raw, unrecognizable. Luna wrapped her arms around his neck, her cheeks streaked with tears and dust from the treehouse. But her eyes were no longer wild with fear. They were calm now, soft in the way only a child can be when they know, truly know, that they're safe. A few steps away, Mara leaned against the wooden wall, holding herself steady. Her shoulders were bruised, her neck scraped red where wings and bodies had struck her. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Her breathing was uneven, but her eyes never left Luna, as if she feared blinking might let danger slip back in. Two guards dragged Elena down the hallway. She screamed, thrashed, clawed at the air like someone whose grasp on reality was tearing apart thread by thread. Grant, I was set up. I didn't do anything. Grant!" But her voice weakened as she was pulled away, fading like the last rumble of a storm forced to die. And when she was gone, Grant turned. The look he gave Mara, full of pain, full of gratitude, full of something deeper he had no words for, made her glance away, unable to brace herself for the weight of it. But he walked toward her anyway, slowly, as if each step had to land exactly where it belonged. "Mara?" He said her name with a voice both broken and gentle. I don't have the words for what you've done." She opened her mouth to say, "It's nothing. Anyone would have done it." But her throat sealed up. And before she could force a sound out, Luna wriggled out of his arms and ran toward her. The girl hurled herself at Mara, tiny arms wrapping around her waist, face buried in her shirt as she cried, "You saved me! You're my angel!" Mara froze, not from pain, but from the sheer purity of those words. It squeezed her chest until breathing felt impossible. She placed a hand gently on Luna's back, steadying her voice. "I just did what I had to do, Luna. That's all." Grant stood beside them, eyes still red, but no longer shattered. They were clear now, bright with gratitude, with respect Mara had never expected to receive. "If it weren't for you," he said softly, "I don't know what today would have become. I was blind. I'm sorry for every moment I didn't see you, didn't hear you, didn't trust what you sensed before any of us did." His voice cracked again. "Thank you for saving my daughter. Thank you for saving this family." For the first time in years, Mara didn't know where to put her hands, where to look, how to breathe without tears rising. But the feeling that spread through her chest, heavy and warm, painful yet meaningful, told her one truth. Today, she hadn't just saved a child. She had pulled an entire family back from the edge of a cliff they never even realized they were standing on. The evening wind swept across the lodge's front yard, carrying the sharp scent of pine after the storm of wings earlier. The world was quiet now, but the echoes of what had happened lingered in every breath. Mara stood still, her hand resting gently on Luna's shoulder, still half disbelieving that they were truly safe. Grant took a step toward her, then stopped. He drew in a slow, steadying breath, his shoulders holding the last tremors of fear. And then, without warning, he knelt right there in front of Mara, his motion solemn, sincere, as if offering one of the most important vows of his life. "Mara?" He looked up at her, eyes rimmed red but clear. "From today on, you're not just a housekeeper, not someone working in the background. You are the person who saved my family. You did what I, despite all the strength and love of a father, couldn't do." Mara's heart tightened, not from surprise, but from the depth of something in his words that touched a place she rarely let anyone reach. "Grant, I only did what had to be done. No," Grant interrupted gently but firmly. "You did something extraordinary." Luna tugged at Mara's hand, her eyes shimmering, her voice soft, as if afraid the wind might steal it. "Miss Mara, can you not leave? Can you stay with me? With Daddy? With our family?" "Our family." The words hit Mara like a warm, unexpected weight. All her life, she had belonged nowhere. No one had ever looked at her and seen her worth. No one had ever told her she mattered enough to change someone's fate. Yet here, in the very place that had held secrets and danger, she was being seen. With gratitude, with trust, with affection that felt strangely like home. Mara knelt down to Luna's height. "I will always be here when you need me. I promise you that." Then she lifted her gaze to Grant, who tried and failed to hide the last tears shaking loose. "And if your family needs me, I won't turn away." Grant let out a breath he had been holding for far too long. "Mara, you didn't just save us. You made us see ourselves again. You taught me what it means to truly notice someone, to truly see them." A soft smile bloomed on Mara's lips, small but deep, the smile of someone who had just found a piece of herself she thought forever lost. The wind whispered through the trees, no longer carrying the heavy sweetness of danger or the scent of fear. Only peace remained, as if the lodge had finally reclaimed its light after a long shadow. She squeezed Luna's hand, rose to her feet, and for the first time, not just today, but in her entire life, Mara understood something simple and profound. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is standing firm when everything tries to break you, and choosing still to protect what you know is right.